Eric Gallien has been named the new Charleston County School Superintendent after a 6-2 vote. Today, I talk one-on-one with Dr. Carol Tempel, a member of the Charleston County School Board, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Dr. Carol Tempel, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. I'm glad to be here. Glad to do these interviews with people in our community. It's a great service.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it greatly, ma'am. Yes, absolutely. I know, obviously, that you obviously are a Charleston County School Board member. And as you know, you all just voted to hire a new superintendent. In fact, the Charleston County School District has officially offered Dr. Eric Gallien the position of superintendent. I just learned how to pronounce his name an hour ago. So after 2 hours of closed-door deliberations, the board members voted publicly to offer him the job. The vote was 6-2 with Ed Kelly and Leah Watley voting no. Prior to the vote, you all were obviously in contract negotiations with him since May 30th. So why the 6 votes for him?
Well, why 6 votes for him? Because he was a very good candidate. You know, when the board decided to approach the hiring of a superintendent, we hired a search firm, and the search firm had about 44 candidates for us that could be considered. And we had worked pretty diligently with the community to come up with a leadership profile for the person that we wanted to be our superintendent. And the community gave us a lot of feedback, and that was used to develop a leadership profile. And so from the 44, the company, BWP, nominated 7 people. And then when we were looking a little bit more closely, we decided to work with 6. So we interviewed 6 different candidates, and 5 of them all had superintendent experience. One candidate had been like at the deputy level, so just under the superintendent level. Yeah. And so we interviewed 6, and then we narrowed the list down to 3. And Dr. Gallien was one of the 3 candidates that we were voting. We voted 9-0, and that's in public information. 9-0 to invite him for a second interview. Right. And we wanted to have a second interview. We wanted to also have an opportunity for him to visit a variety of our schools, which he did. And then we also wanted to have a focus group with Dr. Gallien, and we had about 40 participants with people coming from different perspectives to ask him questions. And everyone in the focus group got to ask a question, and he responded. And then afterwards, we had a meet and greet. So that was Dr. Gallien. Now, the other 2 candidates were voted to. We wanted to bring 2 more people to Charleston. Both of those candidates got a 6-3 vote from the board. And we wanted to follow the same process. Now, when you're working with a company and you're working with superintendents who are under contract, you have to give them some time to let them notify their boards. I mean, that's just professional courtesy. And unfortunately, the names were leaked out. We don't know who leaked the names. Only board members were supposed to know the names. And anyway, it was then posted on social media. And the candidates, one of the things we discovered out of the interviews is all of these candidates had been watching school board meetings. They had looked at our budgets. I mean, they were really studying the district to decide whether they wanted to take a job here, move their, families here, make an investment of their professional career into our community. And so when their names were leaked on social media, both of the candidates, the 2 candidates that we also wanted to bring, pulled out. So we were left with Dr. Gallien. But, we decided that it was okay. We were still going to go through the process that we had planned. and we would, make our determination afterwards. So that was the process we used, and we all still remained, very, very interested in Dr. Gallien. So anyway, he's coming. He's ready. He's already working with staff in the district. He even has a retreat. He's working on a retreat with the school board members, which I heard. Really exciting. And his, first official day is July 1st. Yeah, July 1st. He is coming on, Saturday. I don't know if he's in the district today or not. I'm not sure what his travel plans are, but he's on the payroll July 1. So we're excited to work with him. Dr. Gallien comes to us with superintendent experience. He was up in Racine, Wisconsin, but if you look at his total career, he was a classroom teacher. He was a principal at 2 different levels of schooling. He's got 2 master's degrees, and he has his PhD in education. So he's very well qualified. He's had broad experience in Milwaukee. There were some 160 schools, I think, that he was deputy superintendent, and then Racine is a smaller amount of schools, but the Racine community, between Racine and Milwaukee, he's got experience with urban communities, suburban communities, and rural communities. So he's bringing a wealth of experience here, and so I'm excited for Charleston to have him come.
Well, and I want to talk to you about that is in just a few seconds, Dr. Tempel. But I know that obviously, according to the media, the vote to proceed with Dr. Gallien's contract negotiation was taken after the board had ample opportunity to interview, obviously, multiple candidates. How much time were you all actually given for these other candidates?
What do you mean, how much time? All of the candidates that we interviewed on the first interview, we had interviewed them for about an hour and a half each one, to personally interview them. We looked at their resumes. We, were checking references, that kind of thing. So I don't know in totality how much time we spent on each candidate, but, the plan was to spend a significant amount of time, the time to, first interview, the second interview, then the school, the touring of the schools. I mean, and Dr. Gallien toured the schools. I spent probably another couple hours with him touring a school, and I was so impressed because the school that we visited hadn't really planned for him to meet with students or teachers, and he initiated, whenever we went into classroom, he initiated conversations with the students. He sought out teachers, and while we ate our lunch with the principal, I mean, he and the principal were able to dialogue, about the educational issues, relative to their school. So that was a lot of time. And then we had the focus group that went for some, I don't know, hour. And then there were a couple more hours that people could just, come up and meet him. So it was quite a lot of time actually invested in interviewing.
So you talk about those resumes, Dr. Tempel. Were those resumes made available to the public?
No, not initially. No.
And do you know why not?
Well, because you're in a hiring process, Quintin. These are professional people, and the board is trying to interview candidates and make decisions about that. That's just, that now the resume will be public information, but at the time you're in process of negotiating and so on, all of that, I don't think it's customary in professional organizations to, release the resumes.
Okay, going back to 2015, when obviously the Charleston County School Board hired Dr. Postaway, what was the search firm used for that one?
I don't, now, I was not involved with the board, but I don't think there was a search firm. Uh, I don't know. I'm not the person to speak to how Dr. Postaway was hired.
Well, let me ask you about this process. Why was there very little information, discussion, and transparency and accountability from him and the school board?
What do you mean by that?
The process of hiring him. Why wasn't there little information and discussion and transparency and accountability from the board?
Well, I think we were. I really feel like we were being very open. The interviews were conducted in executive session, but then when we came out of an executive session, we said what we did. We said what process we were going to follow. We had the presentation from the search firm was in public, information. The process that we wanted to follow was open to the public. We told them, what we were doing. So I feel like, maybe other people don't feel that way, but I feel like we were being as open and transparent with the process and the people we were working with under the guidelines of normal professional, searching for a candidate.
But in a media interview, Chairwoman Pam McKinney, said she understood what state law says, but the board had a confidentiality agreement with the search firm. So is she under the impression, Dr. Tempel, that a board agreement with the search firm actually overrules state law?
I don't know how you would, judge what she's saying. You have to ask her what she means by that.
Yeah, and I hope to get her on Quintin's post up soon. I've been asking for a while, but we'll see how that goes. Did these candidates believe their names wouldn't be leaked until they were okay with it?
They knew that their names would be the way it works is the top 3 candidates that we chose, or if we had chosen 4,
yes, ma'am.
At the time that we had chosen them, yes, their names would have been made public, but we needed to allow them to notify their own boards and districts first. That was the agreement that we made on the process. So as soon as we could announce the names, having gone through that process, that's what we fully intended to do. But somehow we were sidetracked. We released Dr. Gallien's name as soon as we could. It was released, immediately once we knew we were proceeding with the next interview and the school visit and the focus group and the meet and greet. So that was the plan that we had. So we had to deal with, what happened. And I think, I think if we had, not found somebody that we really liked, we certainly wouldn't have voted for the person. So I'm very hopeful about Dr. Gallien's leadership here. He certainly has the educational background. I loved it in the focus group when he was asked by Reverend Nelson, well, have you watched the Charleston County School Board? And he responded, yes. And then Dr. Rivers said, well, do you still want to come? And he said, yes, I do. I think I can work with this board. And I think the fact that he's already scheduled a meeting, a retreat with the board is just, to me, it's just very positive. So I'm wanting this to work for our children. I think Dr. Gallien has the heart of our community. His grandmother was raised here in Charleston, and then, like many African American families, they moved to other communities where they felt they would have had more opportunities. And he's wanting to come back to Charleston. I mean, he visits here. He has family here, so I think it's good. I'm glad he has the heart, I think, of our community at interest here.
But when you put him aside, Dr. Tempel, when were you all scheduled to release the other 2 names in the mix?
Well, as soon as they had the chance to notify their boards. But we, it was really a short timeline that people had, and if we had, I don't know, the leak had occurred maybe, I don't know, Sunday night, Monday, something like that. If we had just, if that hadn't occurred, we would have released the names as soon as they had had a chance to speak with their boards. So it wasn't like we were going to hold back. We were just waiting to be able to release the names under the agreement that we had made, that they would have the opportunity to communicate with their communities and boards first.
And when did they actually do that?
Well, I don't know. I don't have that date in front of me. I think we had the special election on a Friday, so it was over that weekend.
Yeah.
Happened. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And, yes, ma'am. Oh, quick. Yes, ma'am. And Dr. Tempel, of course, I watched the May 22nd votes, obviously, and the finalists were selected by voice vote. Candidate A 6-3, candidate B 6-3, and candidate E 9-0. So how did those votes split?
Well, I mean, we since have released those votes. 9-0 was Dr. Gallien, and 6-3 was McNulty, and 6-3 was I think his name is Branson. I'm getting past.
No worries.
But yeah, that's how it was. So yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And
we released those.
Yes, ma'am.
Those names and those votes.
And now, setting the stage, from a general standpoint, when you look at the board and the politics that's going on right now, especially with the leak, how does this board as a whole know what it takes to actually run a district effectively?
Well, everybody, this is a brand new board. And so people were elected by people in their communities. And I think that they are learning more about the school district. These board members have been were elected in November.
Right.
Most of them, were not people who, maybe knew the inner workings of the district, or maybe had, school board experience kind of thing. So the newness of people, just one, trying to get to know each other, 9 of us trying to get to know each other, build relationships with each other, and figure out the working relationships. So the officers of the board were elected fairly, early after the election, and they're figuring out, how do you set the agenda for the meeting? What are people interested in? And then there's a whole set of routine things that go on, with the district operation anyway. So, they, in all fairness, I'm probably the most experienced, but I'm not in a leadership position. So I'm just, there to participate and advocate as I, know how to do, and work with the others and try to understand, what their interests are, what their perspectives are, try to make suggestions if, I think something would work better. Like one of the things, if you watch our meetings to begin with, everybody was just popping up with, saying things. And so I suggested to the chair, well, why don't we do this like classroom style and go around the dais, one to call out the district people and names and give everybody a chance to, discuss, and then, go around again. And so I think we've, done more orderly things. And I think, the board has, many of us on the board have now had more opportunities to interact with staff, ask questions, look at the budget, ask about details. So, it's a growth process. Nobody walks into these positions knowing exactly what to do and when to do it. So as long as everyone is, willing to, roll their sleeves up and try to make the best decisions and be informed, I think, that's an admirable thing on part of a school board member.
And so, what is the relationship with the school board now? All 9 of you, of course.
Well, we're working to get to know each other. We try to find out, what we're individually interested in. We talk with each other about, issues where, I can only speak for myself.
Sure.
I try to be honest and open. If something bothers me, I don't have a problem, telling anybody about it. If I think there's a better way to approach it, I'm open, to doing that. I'm eager if I sense that another board member has a different perspective or point of view, I'm going to discuss it with them, and I will tell them, why I think it might be, wise to think about it in a different way. So I think, trying to be honest and transparent and having courage to say things and holding on to your integrity, those are important aspects to me, and that's how I approach working with my colleagues.
But after this leak, Dr. Temple, do you believe this board actually has integrity?
I'm not going to comment on that because I don't know. I don't know how the leak happened. No one on the board has admitted it. So I think that whoever did what they did, it's their integrity that's in question, and time usually tells. So we'll see what happens. But you just have to, the thing about it is, when things happen, you just have to try to make the best situation. And, if I hadn't thought that Dr. Gallien was, a worthy candidate, I would have spoken up and voted differently. But it didn't change my view of him. Of course, I would have liked for the community to meet the other 2 candidates. But I was one of the board members that voted for the 3. So there were 3 that I thought were worthy of consideration, and so I'm not disappointed.
Okay, in the choices. So, okay, Dr. Temple, going forth though, I know you're on the board for the next 4 years, I believe.
Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah, technically, yes, indeed. So,
Exactly.
right. So, what mechanism would you all put in place to make certain that leaks like this doesn't happen in the future?
Well, I think that we've talked with each other. We've said to each other, this was a breach, and we can't operate this way. And if we find out officially who leaked, I think we will censor them. But anyway, we don't know. So I think what you hope is that you learn from experience. And so, if one of the board members leaked it, I think they now see the seriousness and the consequences of their actions. And hopefully, I'm a hopeful person. I hope that they learn from the lessons and the consequences. You see, you often don't, people often don't see the consequences of their actions. So hopefully whoever did this is fully aware that it had consequences, and maybe they have regrets. My regret is that we didn't have the opportunity for the community to meet all 3 candidates. That's my regret.
I want to get back to that in a second, but let me go back to what you just said. Obviously, the community didn't get to meet those other two candidates. So why didn't the board, Dr. Temple, in your mind, just kept on Don Kennedy in place if he was willing to do so for another year and actually start the superintendent search process with a committee handpicked by the community members versus the board members?
Well, the board is responsible for hiring the
Right.
superintendent. So the board members would take input from the community, and that's what we wanted to do. But ultimately, the board members have to make a decision. And I think that if we didn't have a really good candidate in place, but 9-0. This board doesn't do many 9-0, so there was a lot of agreement about Dr. Gallien. Now, the reality of it is, Quintin,
Yes, ma'am.
that given the time that we were advertising and hiring, I mean, there would have been no reopening of the position until maybe late next fall, December, January, because a lot of the candidates that were brought to us, we see, that people are taking jobs. So the pool we picked the 6 best candidates out of that pool of people, and we did our due diligence to, interview them. So if we had decided to wait, it wouldn't have been immediate. It would have been another 6-7 months. Well, maybe not 6, maybe 5 or 6 months before we probably would have gone through the process.
And would you be willing to keep Don Kennedy in place?
I don't want to speak to that. I mean, obviously, if we hadn't found a candidate that met our leadership profile, yes, the answer would have been yes. But we were looking for the leadership profile was someone who had been a superintendent and had educational experience, had been a principal, had been a teacher. And so those were the kind of candidates that we were looking for.
Now, but Dr. Temple, I'm looking at Racine right now, the Racine Unified School District, which Dr. Gallien oversaw, and it scores 18 out of 100 on the college readiness, has only 29 schools, a math proficiency at 12, and a reading at 18. So what made him a qualified candidate?
Well, here you come into the data, Quintin. All right. So first of all, Wisconsin is a state that ranks very high in public education. And then you're looking at Racine and you're looking at the kind of community that Racine is. And it's a very challenging community. Now you're also looking at the data for the district. So the data that we also looked at was data that showed growth over time based on programs that were being put in place that would bring about achievement. And so you're looking at multiple things, not just the district rating. You have to look at where growth is being made, especially in schools that have challenging educational situations. So Dr. Gallien is familiar with a lot of the things that we're doing in Charleston. I mean, I don't know if you watched the last school board meeting, but we're seeing growth, which is what you want to look at. We're seeing growth in our ELA programs. We're seeing growth in our math programs. We've got some solid practices going on, working with, core curriculum. You're getting the bugs, aren't you?
Yes, ma'am. I don't mind the heat, but I don't like the bugs.
I know, I don't like the gnats, but I don't know if the gnats are mosquitoes that you.
Right.
But anyway, so we're seeing growth. We've got a lot of good things going on in the district with core curriculum. A lot of professional development is going on with for teachers, and we've got some, ESSER funds have allowed us to get into programs and training that have helped. So I'm just so hopeful I mean, the preliminary results that we're seeing are really showing that the goals that we're and goals and guardrails that we have in the district, we're monitoring those goals. We have a calendar for when each goal is to be brought to the board with, information about how the students are doing. So I'm really hopeful about all of that. We've got a lot of positive things going on here in the district.
So when you go back to Wisconsin, what was the growth rate for the schools in Racine under his leadership?
I don't have that data right in front of me, but it was consistent growth over 10 years. I mean, it was just a path. There's no way I can show you.
No worries.
But we looked at that data, and it was positive growth over a 10-year period. So that was good.
Dr. Temple, I'm looking at Dr. Gallien's record right here. Obviously with the much touted long-range master plan initiated in 2018, but according to reports, it have not reached the benchmarks or had any updates in 2 years. A resurfacing of a softball field was supposed to be completed this year, but it has been pushed back to 2028. And despite obviously increased revenues from the state, despite a drop in students, and despite COVID money setbacks, he actually spent less on students. The best elementary school in Racine, the only one, had a rating of 6 to 10 when it came to reading proficiency, and it actually, compares to Wisconsin's 39%. So are you sure you all vetted this man properly?
I believe we did, Quintin.
In what way?
Well, as you say, we looked at his resume, we looked at his experiences, we interviewed him, we asked him really tough questions, to get his responses to it. We looked at, information that we had. We looked at the data. So, if you've ever been in a position of hiring somebody, it's you have to go on as much information as you have, and then you have to make your own professional judgments as well about the person, the personality of the person, and the interactions, and how did they respond, to the questions. And I think, my husband sat and watched the focus group, and Dr. Gallien was asked some really tough questions, and he was forthright in answering them. And I know my husband said, "I'm going down to meet him now." So, I feel, I feel that I did my best. I hope it was my best. I mean, that's all you can do. But I feel very, very hopeful and very confident that that we've hired a superintendent who is going to continue to lead us forward.
Okay, Dr. Temple, did you all choose Dr. Gallien based on his leadership profile or the data from Racine, Wisconsin?
All of it. You have to. A person is a sum total of all of the things. Now, I have said this to other people. Now, we might have hired a superintendent who's coming from a stellar district. Okay. Now, a stellar district, if you look at it, probably has the most stellar students, the very few, students in poverty, et cetera, et cetera. So, a person like that may not really be the best person to tackle a district that has the challenges that our district has. So we were also looking for somebody who had experience with all the many different kinds of schools that we have in Charleston. And so, we didn't look just at one factor. You look at multiple ways to make an evaluation on the person.
So when you go back to Wisconsin, which I love,
keep going back to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I need to go take a vacation there next.
Go get those snow plows.
yeah. That's why I like summer here. But what was the poverty level there in Racine when he was superintendent?
Well, I don't have the the percent, but it's high. I think it's somewhere around I don't know, 60%, something like that.
Wow. Now, obviously, when you think about a superintendent search, a lot of people are asking and still are asking, why not choose somebody from Charleston?
Well, I understand, but I don't know that there were people from Charleston who applied.
Okay.
And so, first of all, you had to apply. And second of all, we had a leadership profile that we were looking at certain qualities and criteria and experience and credentials, etc. And so, as I say, 7 people, and then we ruled out 1. We found 6 people who met the leadership profile. So that was it. I guess you could have. I would never thought of us doing that, but we went with the firm. We went with the process, and we found somebody. So that was a good thing.
Now, when were the formal background checks and references performed on all of these candidates, including Dr. Gallien?
There was the first screening, like when the BWP first, aligned the candidates. They did a background search on them, and then once we as a board narrowed down to the 3 candidates, that was when the deeper dive also was handled. So that was when that happened.
Dr. Carol Tempel with the Charleston County School Board. Thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
You're welcome, Quintin. Let's all embrace Dr. Gallien and wish him the best and welcome him with our open hands and open hearts in Charleston.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.